So you've decided to go camping. Let's talk a little bit about camping etiquette. Hey, ScouterStan. Let's talk about that camping etiquette. Camping etiquette has a lot of different phases and a lot of different elements that need to be thought of all at the same time. Now, one of the big things that we talk about in scouting is leave no trace. Leave no trace is something that we do to protect the environment and the animals that live there so that they can thrive and we can enjoy the outdoors. So our human impact needs to be as minimal as possible. That includes fires and the different things that go on at camp when we're camping. We need to make sure that those things are always in our minds and thought of when we're doing stuff. And that is the etiquette of camping. Now, through Leave No Trace, we talked about Leave No Trace in a video right there, and definitely check that out. We don't want people to make their own trails. We want them to use the established trails through the environment by destroying vegetation for not an established trail. That is not good for the animals that call that area home. So we need to be mindful of that. And using those established trails is a big part of what the camper's etiquette, hiking etiquette, that is really important. Now, for camping etiquette, it is important that we use established campsites, ones that have a picnic table or some kind of fire ring or something of that nature. These are perfectly good environments for humans to camp in. That is one of the big things about camping etiquette, is to make sure that you're using the proper campsites. Just cutting a new campsite can really have a very detrimental impact to the environment. They're also not as comfortable because of trying to develop a new area. So stick to an established campsite whenever possible. Noise control is a huge issue with a lot of camping. There's a lot of times when there's a camporee, a jamboree, or something going on when there's a lot of different troops coming in, and the noise level for camping goes up. So you have to be mindful of those noise levels. You want to keep them down, especially during quiet times. A lot of times we call it lights out. You know, when it's lights out, that means voices go to a minimum, whispers, okay? Just that needs to be appropriate in those areas. So many times, those tents that we call home for that night, they're just cloth, okay? They're not walls. And just whispering, your tent mate just next door hears everything, wakes them up. So it's important to keep your noise levels to a minimum. And understand, you're dealing with youth. They're in tents. They out of sight, out of mind. They don't realize that their voice can carry right through that tent and across the street to another camp. So highly critical to make sure that when it's lights out, keep the noise down. Even in the morning, you want to keep the noise down as much as possible. Another thing about the noise, you want to make sure that if you're camping in an area that's open to the public, say a public campsite, there's other non-scouting families that are there. They might have loud music, they may be yelling and screaming and doing all kinds of activities and things late into the night. It might be a nice thing for the adult leadership to go over and just have a conversation with them and explain. It says, hey, we're getting up really early. We need to go to bed early so that we could get up and do canoeing. So that's something, a conversation with them. They can try to keep the music down, try to keep the noise level down. That's something that can be done. You could always talk to the ranger or the facilities manager and see if that's going on that weekend. If there's something in town where a lot of people are camping and might be a big sports thing going on, that's something that you need to be aware of, the noise levels that could be there and very disruptive. Now, what's nice about it is that you can kind of arrange your camping that way. And also, it's less expensive because those sites usually cost more during those peak seasons. And that's another thing that can help with keeping the noise down, but not only that, but keep the budget in mind too. Campfire etiquette. One of the main things that scout leaders really focus on is safety. Safety is a very important part when you're dealing with campfires. You need to make sure that it's age appropriate, that it's appropriate, available. There are camp areas that don't allow a campfire. So that's something that needs to be checked out. But if you're going to be doing a campfire, it has to be in some kind of established campfire area. Typically they'll have stones arranged and it's been fired and it's been set up for that purpose. And there will be seats and so on, or logs or something of that nature. That is a great thing to have in your campsite. And but it has to be done in a safe way. It's important that if you're going to be doing a campfire, you need to make sure that if you're in a unit level, you want to make sure that there's all the things there that can put out the fire. You need to have, the right amount of water. You never want to build a fire bigger than you need. I mean, it's something that needs to be thought through as etiquette when you're camping. Now, another big benefit of having a scout troop, and if you're at a public area, you can invite families that are thinking about scouting to come in and join your campfire. You could do skits and jokes and all the campfire things that they do in a troop or a pack, and that's something that's a lot of fun. And getting families that like your neighbors, your camping neighbors, could come over and enjoy that camp out, that fire, and what we call fellowship with the scouts. That is awesome. That is a recruiting tool too. Always be out there recruiting. That is something that you can do, and that's scouts in action, and that is huge. Check with the campsite to make sure that you can use either the firewood that they have, or you could bring your own firewood. That's one of those things. In that Leave No Trace video, I'm going to do it again. Okay. Definitely check that one out. It talks about firewood and all that stuff. This is important. You want to bring your firewood and try to keep the impact to a minimum. Now, when the fire is over, you want to make sure that it's out and cold. You want to be able to hold your hand over it and not feel warmth coming off of the coals, okay? And there's a way to put it out, and that is all a part of scouting. So make sure that if you're going to walk away from that fire, it needs to be out. And what I mean by out is cold. You can put your hand directly over it and not feel heat coming off of it. The reason for that is quite simple. Some people put it out and there's a lot of smoke and steam coming off the water, but then they walk away. A lot of times those coals are insulated underneath, and all it takes is for a wind to come along and blow leaves onto those coals, and then you got a problem. There's nobody there to put that out. So it has to be cool when you put your hand over it to make sure that it is actually out. This is a big part of that Leave No Trace. So you may be required to actually take it with you, cold. You might have to dig out the fireplace and put them in buckets and seal them up and put them in your trailer so that you can take it with you. Pack it in, pack it out kind of thing. That's one of those big things in camping etiquette. Food storage and the wildlife should always be considered. You are visiting their home. And if you're cooking up something, they're going to go, I'm going to visit at 2 in the morning. So it is very imperative that as a scout leader that we take care of our campsite and our camp etiquette so that we're not disturbing the animals that call that home most of the time. That's one of the things that we have in a lot of campsites. We'll have bear boxes where you can put your smellables and your food, any of the things that might attract bears. You could put that in those bear boxes, so that way they're not visiting your campsite early in the morning. The same thing's true with raccoons and squirrels and foxes and all the different animals that live in the woods. Even the deer will come, and I've even seen deer licking the trees that soap water had been poured on. Okay, so it is important that we think about that. It's very attractive to those animals. So we need to have that etiquette to make sure that the wildlife that calls that home is not disturbed. We don't want to break that. They should be foraging naturally. They shouldn't be looking for your goodies, okay? And they will make a huge mess. I know that. Raccoons, bears, even you name all the things that live in the woods. I've actually been in campsites where there were styrene things all over the ground, everywhere you looked, because bears and raccoons came along and destroyed containers. So if you have food or anything that has a smell to it, you want to put it away in a container that is animal resistant. Okay, so that is one of the big things about camping etiquette. Sanitation and hygiene is important because a scout is clean. That is, it's a law. And a lot of times it's important that if you have family that's going to be camping, to have a facility, a boys and girls room, with a flushable toilet and showers and those kinds of things are important. Now, sometimes our camping is in wilderness, so those things are not available. As a unit, you need to make sure that your unit is able to pack it in and pack it out. So there's a lot of things that go on in that. If you're going to bring in water and food, you're going to have to make sure that you take care of the waste that comes from that. And you have to be able to package that up and tote it out so that there's no or little impact as possible to the environment. So these are different levels of camping, and you need to make sure the unit that you're taking is able to do those things. Are they able to pack it in, pack it out, or do they need facilities? That is something you need to do prior to actually arranging the time to go and do that activity. Now, another thing that's very important, we did touch on with Leave No Trace, is biodegradable soap. This is something you can use for your dishwashing so that when you're cleaning up from the meal, that it's taken care of. And you make sure that you use biodegradable soap so that you can aerate it, spray it out of the container once you're done with it, and that way it's dispersed over a large area. The next time it rains, that biodegradable soap dissipates into the soil. It's actually really good for the soil. That soap helps the soil have nutrients and be able to seep through better, and you get a little more. It's very involved, okay? But biodegradable soap is a wonderful thing to have in a campsite so that your impact to the overall campsite is kept to a minimum. Now, there are campsites that have a sump, which is basically a tube coming out of a septic tank in a bleeder field. These are usually high adventure areas that have these sumps, and it's a pipe that comes up. It's usually about a 4-inch pipe with a screen on top. You take all of your wastewater that you're using and you dump it down into this basic sewage system that's been installed in the campsite. So a sump is a very important thing to keep clear and clean. You want all of the crumbs and stuff like that to go into a plastic bag and maybe even put up in your bear bag. So that's a smellable. They'll go after that. So you need to keep that stuff clean as possible. Disrupting an animal's natural foraging and its natural ability to feed itself is critical. If you disrupt that, that's bad for the animal. It takes them a long time to get back to their habit of foraging and being able to sustain themselves. If they don't, they become a burden because then they're following campers and hikers. Not good. That is something that we need to be very aware of. And in camping etiquette, it is important that we think about the animals who live in those camps most of the time. Now, before we go any further, I do want to invite you to our monthly meeting. It's on the first Sunday of each month, and it's at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So you're more than welcome to join us and ask questions and just have fun. You know, that's one of those wonderful things about that meeting. I also want to thank everybody on Patreon for their continued support of our channel. And our channel members. You can be a channel member. You hit the join button and join up. There's all kinds of badges and emojis and different things. They even get the videos exclusively for themselves, ad-free, which is an added bonus. And then, of course, if you don't want to join in and do a monthly donation, you could always do a one-time donation by hitting the thanks button. So get involved. I really do appreciate all that you do in scouting and here on the channel. One of the major points that needs to be made in camping etiquette is respecting campsite boundaries. Now, many times there is an assigned campsite for your unit to be put into, and sometimes that may not be big enough or it's way too big. It can vary depending on the unit that's using that campsite. So it's important to talk with your neighbors, find out where their boundaries are, and if you need more space, you can kind of expand and kind of share an area next to them or one that's not being used. That's important. So you need to have that boundary area. Not necessarily where you're going to put up a wall or something, but a known area that is your unit's responsibility and your unit where you're going to have your gear and it's your home base for whatever activities are going on. Some of these things can be huge. Some of these camporees and campouts and things that they're doing. In your district, your council, even national. So you got to have that boundary area so they know where you are, and that's where your home is. That's the important part, to have that boundary. Now, having a boundary that it's in the middle of the road or something, or an area where people would be trafficking through your campsite constant, that's not a good boundary. You need to be somewhere that's off the center of the middle of the road. You need to be moved over so that they can actually get through that area. You need to respect that personal space of your area. And the same's true with all the scout units that are there. They all need to be respectful of those boundaries for the different campsites. That's a huge part of etiquette. Now, with many troops, they will camp by patrols. They'll have different patrols in different areas, and they usually have a table or a dining fly. They might even have an area where they have dishes and their own stove and that kind of thing for each patrol. So the patrols can position in different areas. Usually the adult leadership in a troop will be separate. They're like a patrol. so they would be leader land, as they call it, that needs to be separated within your campsite. So as a whole, you can have different divisions where they are. They can also share things. If there's a picnic table provided or a fire ring or something of that nature, you can share that as a troop. If you have enough for each patrol, that's fine too. So these are very important things to be worked out as far as the etiquette. And typically this is done your first night when you're when you're just arriving and setting up for the first time. Now, one of the big challenges that does come up if you're in a public camping area and your campsite is near another campsite that isn't scouting, that they don't have the same rules and stuff like that. So it's important that you get to know your campsite neighbors. Sometimes they might have pets, and this has come up where pets become an issue, whether it's barking all night long or not being on a leash, or the other campsite's not cleaning up after the pet. The pet runs through your campsite and every scout wants to run after it and pet it or catch it or whatever. It can be very disruptive. Having pets at the campsite can really disrupt activities and disrupt everything that's going on at camp. So it's important to keep that in mind, that other campsites may not have the same rules. And you want to keep as much distance so that your program doesn't disturb them too. So that's very important. Leaving your campsite clean. This is like paying it forward, okay? If you showed up at a campsite, there was styrene pieces everywhere, food packaging all over the place, trash cans completely full. Everywhere you looked, your campsite, most leaders would turn around and go to the camp administrator and say, well, what's going on? That campsite's not ready. So it's important that when you walk into a campsite, you should leave it even better than where you found it. So keeping your campsites clean is absolutely important while you're camping and when you're heading out. Many troops and even packs will do a police line. They'll actually line up all the scouts and have them slowly go through the campsite after all the equipment's been removed, after all the tents are down and put away. They'll go through just the area, back and forth, picking up all those little cellophane straw packet things and getting all those things cleaned up that could be in the leaves, little gum wrappers and things like that. So having them go back and forth, kind of combing the area to make sure that it's nice and clean is important. Now, another big point with camp etiquette is that usually in a troop situation, there's a leader land. In a pack situation, there's a den leader and cub master that kind of congregate at a table. They choose a meeting place for announcements and different things that are going on. Both of those places should have the unit's first aid kit, along with the availability at any given time, all of the records that may be needed if the scout is injured to the point where they need to be transported to the hospital. So that's important to have available. We have videos coming up. When they are available, that's about the first aid kit. Okay, so definitely check that one out. There also needs to be a plan if there's going to be a potential emergency. For instance, if you're in Central Florida and you're camping, the weather might be nice today, but you looked at the weather and there was a hurricane that could veer off and end up in your path. Hurricanes are very big, so it takes a long time for those clouds to come in, and it will be raining like crazy before it even comes close. That's usually a thing about a hurricane. So if you know that something might be an issue, you need to have that plan B, the emergency plan. We have hailstorms, we have lightning storms, we have all the different things. We need to be able to keep our scouts as safe as possible and try to keep them from having any issues while experiencing the wonderful thing of camping. So making sure that you have that plan B in place is important. Finally, a big thing is having a good attitude. Make sure that your scouts are friendly, courteous, and kind to everybody they meet at camping. That way they are receptive to information. A lot of times the other campsites might know something before your campsite does. And having that relationship to be able to talk to other campsites is very crucial to the success, the overall success of your camping trip. When you're on the trail and you see another scout or you see other hikers, make sure you say hello and be authentic with that and have that friendly attitude. That is so critical to being successful in any of the scouting things that we do. Sometimes if they're struggling with something, say for instance you've set up camp and you see another unit, they have a lot of young scouts, they might send over some of your senior boys to kind of help lead putting up their tents if they're struggling with them. I know that adults help that all the time. You can help within your own unit. So lending that helping hand is very important. And after all, it's a good turn. So we need to be able to do that. That's a big part of the scouting process. Is helping others at all times, right? And in that, we help our scouts to succeed. We want them to have the camping etiquette so that they can have a great time, have a great experience, and enjoy camping like never before. So it's very important. And we do so much good work for our scouts. It's a good turn that just keeps going and going. And I want to thank you so much for joining me and listening to about camp etiquette. We have a lot of different things and fun things here on the channel, and I'm so grateful for all of you. Now, if you'd like more information, there's a lot of different videos here on the channel, and I encourage you to just go through them and look at all the different things in here. There's always something available on the channel that covers just about every single subject. So if you'd like more information about, say for instance, the different videos that are over here, like the one on Leave No Trace, I highly recommend it. And until next time, I'll see you on the trail.